Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and we're going to be covering a topic today that I've talked about in the past, but it recently came up in some conversations with players in different servers, and I thought it'd be kind of a good, just hey, let's give a, nice little reminder, but also just kind of give you some reasons to understand of how to measure one's account. This is especially important as we're getting not just closer to Relic 10 and closer to Relic Delta, but also because there's going to be some guild movement coming up. And understanding how to measure an account can be really important, and you want to make sure that you're doing it the right way. So with that said, like, subscribe, comment down below, let me know your thoughts. Let's give a huge shout to the channel members, as always, for their continued support. If you guys are ever interested, that link is below, along with a link to Discord server. Go check it out. Really appreciate all these folks just keeping the faith, believing in me through good, bad, thick, thin, whatever the situation is. You guys are awesome, and I can't thank you enough for being a part of the Fat Phil family. With that said, let's get in here and let's talk about how to measure and rate accounts. Alright folks, so the first thing I always tell people is whenever you're looking at account measures, you need proof, right? Like Luthen in Andor, you need proof, you need details. These details has to be objective, right? And I use Hondo for this on like the whole, it's just good business, right? It's just business. You can't be trying to, alter it like Lord Vader. There's no room for altering these metrics, but you also don't want them to be like, all right, well, we're going to make excuses, or we're going to add in metrics that are, subjective in nature. Who's the most efficient? And, oh, well, this person has more GP, so they should do more. When you're looking at this in your guild or as an individual player, be objective. Just look at, it doesn't matter what your GP is. It's how are you performing? That is it all comes down to performance, right? And I think that's a big area that you can learn sometimes. So let's get started. In the first category is GAC skill rating. Now, some players do not care about GAC, but it's at least a good enough metric to give a general sense of what kind of player they are. And to kind of further analyze this, or further, give you kind of the concept here, I'm going to delete this. Whoops, did I delete? Yeah, I deleted the right thing. So if I scroll down now, right, you can't rate territory wars like you can Grand Arena, right? We can't rate territory war because you have a GAC skill rating, but you can rate the guild. So the way I kind of combined these is if I were to go in here and I look at my, let's go to someone who I know is, let's go to, let's grab, I know he's down here somewhere, Lita Kagos here. So this is my old guild leader. So he's in the guild Desert Reapers. Now his GAC skill rating is 3368. My skill rating is in the 3600s. I have a better skill rating than him. But the guild he's in, Desert Reapers, is a really, really good guild. So when I'm looking at his account and saying, oh, well, he's not as good as me because he's his GAC skill rating isn't as good. If they're in a good guild, you can at least assume that they're a better player than maybe their GAC skill rating kind of portrays. So I always tell players, listen, you might not be able to directly rate the territory war, but you can rate the guild. Are they in a guild that you know is a good guild? Is it one that you can say, hey, you know what? They might not have the GAC skill rating that's immeasurable, but I can measure their guild. I can see what kind of guild they're in, and it can give you context in the kind of player they are. If they're in a top 10 gauntlet guild, you know they're a good player. They don't just let anybody into those, guilds. That's just the way it works, right? The next thing you can do is the hotbot analysis for the gear and mod rating. This is one of those metrics that I think can be really, really good. There's a lot of value here. Again, it is something where it's not quite measuring the fullest of aspects because you think for the mod rating, it's only taking into account speed, and it's, cut off at, 25, 20, and 15. So you figure a 14 speed mod with really good secondaries is not as much in the hotbot as a 15 speed mod. But it's at least a good general sense of, all right, how good are your mods? What is your gear score? It's just a nice measurable that we have because we don't have a ton of measurables in this game. You do have to factor in galactic power, right? You got to factor in galactic power, but you have to be careful with this one Because the one thing with Galactic Power that can be a challenge is that there's a lot of Lightspeed bundle bloat. You think if somebody buys a lot of Lightspeed bundles, they're going to have a ton of Galactic Power, but it's not all going to be useful, or it's not all going to be GP that's actually beneficial. So you've got to try to figure out, is there Galactic Power? Is it Lightspeed bundle bloat, or is it a calculated growth? Is it characters that they've built up for a purpose? Hey, they built K2 for their Rogue One team, or Dark Trooper Moff Gideon, or Trench, or, what characters have they built to get usefulness out of, to build an advantage for their account? That's a really important metric with Galactic Power to understand. What's making it up? And again, you could say that's a little bit of subjectiveness in there, and I would tend to agree. But again, Galactic Power, I always say, is just a context, right? You're 13 million. Is this person 13 million because they've bought every Lightspeed bundle to date, or have they gotten to 13 million through calculated growth? That can give you a good idea of what their roster is, right? What measurables are inside of there. Territory battle performance. This is a big one. Hey, how good are they in territory battles? You can rate the special missions. You can rate combat missions. But you do need to have a little bit of an asterisk there with the combat missions, because combat missions is relative to the guild. And I'm going to kind of give you an example here that, from my own guild that makes sense. For us, in Phase 2 with Geonosians, right, the Geonosian special mission, we don't need that GP. We don't need that mission for us to get the 9 stars in Phase 2. It's a waste of Galactic Power for them. If I was to go Relic 7 my Geos, get 2 more waves, that is pissed away GP. But because, and I just did this, but if you take Dark Trooper Moff Gideon and Scout Trooper up to Relic 8 to use them in the Dark Trooper Moff Gideon mission on Mandalore, that actually helps us. That's actually beneficial Galactic Power. That's beneficial combat mission waves, because it's in a phase where we're not maxing everything out already. So I kind of put that asterisk there to say, if you're going to measure combat waves, make sure you're measuring the waves that are actually meaningful. For some guilds, that means removing Phase 1. For my guild, we remove Phase 1 and 2. We don't look at those. We don't care what you can do in Phase 1 and 2. We care about 3 through 6. So there's an aspect with measuring combat missions that you want to be careful with, because there are some that are just kind of a waste. And then also the special missions is a lot easier. One second, my dog is being hella annoying right now. Really? Was that necessary? Was it necessary, Zeus? Did we need to do that? Did we need to interrupt me like that? Never get any peace in this house. So, yeah, special missions. They're a lot easier to rate. It is something that I would argue, again, some of them can be a little bit harder because you figure there's like a Relic 8, Kira, and L3 are not super high priority. But there are some missions that I do think you can look at and kind of rate an account on to say, hey, they've got a fair amount invested in this and they're going to help us get some extra, resources and rewards. Now, the last area I tell everybody is Conquest. Conquest, in my opinion, is the best way to rate and measure an account, right? This can be for, again, all of these metrics can be for yourself or they can be to compare to somebody else. But I think Conquest is, when you're looking to measure your account, it's the best. Conquest allows you so much benefit because it's ever evolving. There's always changes going on in it. So if you're looking at your account and saying, all right, how am I growing? Are you getting to box 6? Are you getting to box 7? How long did it take you? Are you completing all the feats? Are you having to rely on cheeses? One of the great examples with Conquest that I think a lot of players will start to notice and see is like, as your account grows and you're looking at the feats, do you need to, like, I didn't have to do this one for deployable cooldown systems. I just never even equipped it, which was idiotic. I should have done that. But, like, I don't even notice it, right? I just keep playing and do my stuff. But, are you able to complete enough of the sector feats that that you're actually making a difference, right? So I still haven't done deployable cooldowns. Now I will because I only need 15 more. But you get the concept. How much of Conquest can you realistically complete and without having to do cheeses or without having to, all right, I've got to go look up, how to do Order 66 with a Gear 8, CX2. Your roster's just at the point where you can get the feats done without having to worry. I think Conquest is the way to go for your personal account. But when you're looking at other people's accounts or you're trying to figure out, all right, what other metrics are there, this is when I start bringing up some of those other areas. If you kind of combine all of these metrics, you get a good idea of where a player, how quote unquote good or not good their account is. It's not a straightforward process, right? Because there's a lot of, again, there's subjectiveness to everything. If you're, giving too much weight to, say, GAC and not enough weight to Territory War, players like Fat Phil are going to look great because I've got a great GAC skill rating, but in Territory War, I'm not as much help. Think about, you're even like, with Territory Battle, with the combat missions, one thing to note, are you in a guild where there's a lot of combats open every single phase? Or are you, like with my guild, there are certain missions that we're like, hey, we're not doing this because we're going to piss away GP that we want to use elsewhere. So even with combat missions, there's context to everything. There's always subjectiveness. But if you can try to find those objective metrics that I've shown here, I think you'll get the best view, not just for your account, but for other accounts as well. If you're looking at them from a guild perspective, or even just looking at your peer and saying, what could I do to get better? I think kind of combining all of these things to, you'll get a good idea of what you would want to do to improve your account in the areas that you can make some progress in to kind of catch up to the next person, right? To keep up with the Joneses. So that's the video, folks. Let me know down below. Like, subscribe, comment. I love you all. May the force be with you, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, my friends.